that if Iran doesn't open up the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, the United States will, quote, hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest first.
A U.S.-owned oil tanker targeted in the Strait of Hormuz, one of several attacked by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. The devastation caused to the vessels.
What would American troops do in Iran? One option, securing the Strait of Hormuz to protect oil tankers. That mission would rely almost certainly on air and naval forces. But sources tell Reuters it could also involve U.S. troops on Iran's shores along the...
Or 4:40 local time, Strait of Hormuz. The water looks almost harmless. Black glass under a fading night sky. Tanker lights flickering in long lines. Radar masts cutting clean silhouettes across the horizon. But in less than 30 minutes, this narrow shipping lane transforms into a pressure chamber for the global economy. Nearly 20% of the world's seaborne oil passes through this choke point, 41 kilometers at its narrowest. One mistake here can shake markets from Tokyo to Houston. And this morning, a blockade is already taking shape. Mines in the water, fast attack craft moving from Bandar Abbas, missile batteries warming up on the Iranian coast. What unfolds next will decide whether Hormuz stays closed or whether a joint American force smashes the blockade open before sunrise. Imagine you're standing on the bridge of a destroyer, escorting commercial tankers through the outbound lane. To your port side, the mountains of Oman. To your starboard side, the dark Iranian coastline. Every radio call sounds tighter than the last. Bahrain's U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters has been tracking growing tension for 72 straight hours after regional shipping disruptions, drone harassment, and a sudden surge in IRGC Navy small boat activity near Keshem Island and Larak Island. Now the stakes are obvious. Insurance rates are spiking. Tankers are slowing. Maritime traffic control is warning captains to hold position. And inside that uncertainty sits the joint force Washington has assembled. U.S. Marines forward afloat with anti-ship and air defense detachments, Patriot batteries tied into Gulf radar networks, carrier-based aircraft orbiting south of the strait, and elements of the 3rd Infantry Division moving through pre-planned CENTCOM routes to reinforce critical positions and secure the corridor once the shooting starts. The geography is brutal. The shipping channels are narrow, predictable, and unforgiving. The Iranian side offers high ground, hardened launch sites, coastal missile batteries, and swarms of fast boats that can dart between islands and clutter civilian traffic. On the southern side, Oman's Musandam Peninsula overlooks the passage like a stone knife. Whoever controls detection, timing, and movement here controls the psychological tempo of the entire Gulf. That matters because blockades are not only physical, they are economic theater. You don't need to sink every ship. You just need enough fear, enough fire, enough uncertainty to stop commerce cold. And that is exactly what Tehran's planners believe they can create this morning. A short, violent window of paralysis long enough to prove that the world still has to negotiate on their terms. Inside a fictional Iranian command sequence, the plan looks efficient on paper. Layer 1. Seed the approaches with naval mines and force tanker traffic into hesitation. Layer 2. Push IRGC fast attack craft and drone boats into the clutter, not necessarily to sink major warships, but to fracture formations and saturate sensors. Layer 3. Launch a coordinated wave of anti-ship cruise missiles from mobile coastal batteries around Bandar Abbas and Keshem, while drones rise from concealed sites inland to pull American interceptors in conflicting directions. Layer 4. Flood regional media with footage, declare the strait unsafe, and force shipping companies to suspend transit. Specific numbers drive the gamble. 28 armed fast craft, 16 one-way attack drones, 12 anti-ship cruise missiles, and 24 naval mines deployed or in motion. From Tehran's viewpoint, that mix seems enough. Cheap systems, Short distances, maximum global panic. And for a few minutes, confidence swells. They believe Washington will hesitate before escalating inside one of the world's most sensitive waterways. They believe civilian shipping density will slow American reaction. They believe mines and missiles can create just enough chaos to turn a military corridor into a commercial dead zone. But there's a problem with their plan. Actually, several. They are looking at platforms while the United States is already fighting as a network. They are counting missiles while CENTCOM is counting signatures, launch patterns, data link bursts, and movement corridors. Most of all, they're assuming the blockade begins when the first missile leaves the rail. It doesn't. The blockade began in the electromagnetic spectrum hours earlier, and that means the counter to it is already underway. What they didn't account for is information dominance. At 0411, overhead infrared sensors detect abnormal thermal activity near known transporter erector launcher hide sites. At 0416, a P-8A Poseidon tracking surface patterns northeast of Musandam identifies suspicious small craft maneuvering in classic mine-laying geometry. At 0418, MQ-9 surveillance confirms fast boat dispersal from concealed coves west of Bandar Abbas. By 0422, analysts in Qatar and Bahrain fuse those tracks with Aegis destroyer radar plots and commercial AIS anomalies. The result is clear enough for commanders to stop debating intent. This isn't posturing. This is the opening move. The alert cascades instantly. Fighters already on station are shifted north. EA-18G electronic warfare aircraft are queued for jamming corridors. Ship captains order general quarters. Marine detachments aboard amphibious ships secure launchers and ready small boats. 3rd Infantry Division units tied to air and missile defense support snap into final movement. Heart pounding. This is real now. Could you make that call with 6 minutes to impact? You're there now, inside a combat information center washed in red light. Screens stacked with tracks, altitude boxes, friendlies, unknowns, threats. A warfare commander starts the clock. First threat axis, drones from the north. Second axis, small boats from the west. Third, and most dangerous, cruise missiles skimming low over the water, using islands and terrain to complicate radar timelines. The beauty of the American defense is not one magic shield, it's layers. Information feeding shooters. Shooters feeding other shooters. One system handing off to the next before a single operator has time to panic. On paper, it's doctrine. In practice, it feels like compression. Entire decisions squeezed into seconds. The drone wave arrives first. 16 small signatures, low and fast enough to be annoying, slow enough to be hunted. An E-2D Hawkeye extends the battle space. FA-18s and F-35s push forward, not just to shoot, but to sort. Which drones are decoys? Which are carrying warheads? Which are relaying targeting data? Electronic attack kicks in. Links flicker. Some drones drift. Others continue on pre-programmed routes. Then the first kills start. AIM-9X, gunbursts, shipboard missiles. The sky doesn't explode in one grand Hollywood flash. It breaks in pieces. White sparks, brief fireballs, fragments hissing into dark water. 9 drones gone in less than 3 minutes. 4 more are taken by close escorts protecting the commercial convoy. 3 survive long enough to force evasive turns before they're shredded by combined naval gunfire. 1 wave erased. Not a battle, not a test, an execution of a bad plan. But the real danger is lower, faster, and louder. Fast attack craft now surge from multiple bearings, some armed with rockets, some towing decoys, some likely carrying explosives. They are counting on clutter, civilian radar returns, dawn haze, island shadows, confusion. It almost works. One escort has to choose between holding formation with tankers and turning hard toward an inbound group closing at more than 40 knots. This is where training matters. Helicopters lift from destroyer decks, MH-60Rs armed with Hellfires and precision rockets. Marine teams aboard nearby platforms bring guided munitions to ready. Shipboard 30mm guns and 50 caliber mounts open up. Overhead, drones feed live video. The boats fan out, trying to split the defense. Instead, they enter a kill box. One boat detonates after a direct hit. Another veers, burning into a wake. Two more vanish under overlapping fires. You can almost feel the concussion through the steel deck. 28 boats committed. Within 11 minutes, 21 are destroyed. 5 are crippled, and the remaining 2 turn back toward the coast, trailing smoke. Then the missiles come. 12 anti-ship cruise missiles launch from dispersed sites in staggered intervals to complicate interception. The first warning is not visual. It's the cold clarity of track data snapping stable on multiple consoles. Speed, bearing, altitude, all wrong, all hostile. Aegis immediately assigns priorities. SM-2s and SM-6s rise in vertical plumes, climbing hard before tipping toward the threat lanes. If you've never seen layered air defense work, it feels almost unnatural, like the fleet is throwing invisible spears at targets still below your horizon. One hostile missile drops off the screen at 34 nautical miles. Then another. Then 2 more. But several get through that outer layer, sea skimming, using clutter and geography exactly as designed. That is why the next layer exists. ESSMs launch from escorts in sharp succession. A destroyer heels slightly as missiles leap free. Another hostile breaks apart. Another splashes. Another survives just long enough to trigger a final engagement window. Now it's inside the breathless zone. Seconds. This close, everybody hears it. The ripping howl, the shouted ranges, the unmistakable violence of a phalanx sea whiz spinning up. A wall of tungsten tears across the horizon. One incoming missile disintegrates in a shower of sparks less than 2 kilometers out. Another is clipped, tumbles, and slams into empty water, throwing up a geyser beside a tanker's track. One missile survives long enough to fragment against defensive fire, scattering debris across a warship's weather deck and injuring several sailors, but inflicting no mission kill. Final tally of the missile exchange: 12 launched, 10 destroyed cleanly, 1 broken up at the inner layer, 1 causes minor damage with no strategic effect. How much time from first detection to last intercept? About 7 minutes. Less time than most people spend waiting for coffee. And that is the moment the blockade fails. Not when every threat is gone, but when the convoy keeps moving. Still, commanders know defense alone does not reopen Hormuz. You have to break the machinery of repetition. If mobile launchers remain hidden, if drone crews rearm, if mine layers reset, the next convoy will face the same gauntlet. So authorization for counterstrikes moves fast through a very real command architecture adapted to this fictional scenario. Defensive response, proportional suppression, maritime corridor restoration. The order is not emotional, it is calculated. Neutralize launchers, destroy staging sites, cut command links, eliminate mine warfare support, deny follow-on capacity. In other words, don't just stop the attack, end the blockade. The response unfolds across domains at once. Carrier-based fighters, already airborne, roll north with pre-planned target packages. Tomahawk-capable ships in the broader theater receive coordinates on coastal missile storage areas and command nodes tied to the launch sequence. Electronic warfare aircraft keep pressure on communications. Cyber and signal units jam, spoof, and fragment the enemy's ability to rebuild a coherent picture. On the southern side of the strait, marine littoral detachments move to extend sensing and anti-ship coverage, locking key lanes under persistent observation. Elements associated with the 3rd Infantry Division reinforce protection for logistics hubs, air defense sites, and choke point access on the friendly side of the Gulf, turning what Tehran hoped would be a sprint into a wall of sustained combat power. This is the part many viewers miss. Modern military strength is not just the shooter pulling the trigger. It's the system that keeps the corridor alive after the trigger is pulled. The first counterstrikes hammer launch areas near Bandar Abbas. Secondary explosions confirm missiles still on transporters. Another set of precision weapons tears into drone support revetments inland. A concealed fuel and munitions point erupts in a chain of blasts visible across the water. Small boat facilities used for swarm staging are hit next. Piers splintered, maintenance shelters burning, command vehicles abandoned mid-escape. Mine warfare support craft attempting to scatter are tracked and engaged before they can regroup. Meanwhile, coalition mine countermeasure teams begin the slow, nerve-wracking work of clearing the passage. That part gets fewer headlines. It is also the difference between a tactical success and a reopened waterway. Could you focus on inch-by-inch clearance, knowing another attack might come at dawn's second light? That is the human burden inside every strategic headline. By 0613, less than 2 hours after the first clear indicators, the picture has flipped. Iranian coastal launch capacity in the immediate battle space is shattered. Drone control sites are gone or blind. Fast boat concentrations have collapsed. Mine hunting helicopters and naval specialists are marking safe transit lanes. Above them, fighters keep orbit. Beneath them, sonar crews keep searching. In the logistics chain behind them, the joint force keeps feeding ammunition, fuel, medical support, and replacement parts into the fight. This is where the title becomes reality. U.S. Marines and 3rd Infantry Division elements have entered the Hormuz fight not as cinematic lone heroes, but as part of a layered joint operation, securing the corridor, protecting the network, and ensuring the blockade cannot regenerate faster than it can be dismantled. So what are the numbers? Final tally from this fictional scenario: 16 attack drones committed, all 16 destroyed. 28 fast attack craft engaged, 21 destroyed, 5 crippled, 2 retreating. 12 anti-ship cruise missiles launched, all rendered strategically ineffective. 24 naval mines deployed or in process, most identified quickly enough to prevent catastrophic shipping loss, with clearance operations continuing through the day. U.S. and partner forces sustain limited injuries and minor damage to one escort, but no major vessel is lost, no tanker is sunk, and the shipping lane remains viable. On the strike side, multiple launch sites, boat facilities, drone support areas, and command nodes are neutralized in under 42 minutes of concentrated response. For every disruptive system launched into the corridor, the joint force answers with detection, discipline, and denial. And the aftermath reaches beyond the water. Energy traders reopen their screens to a very different signal than Tehran intended. The world expected panic. Instead, it sees a demonstration, not of recklessness, of integration. Information linked to training, training linked to doctrine, doctrine linked to speed. That is the lesson. Blockades in the modern era are not just broken by firepower. They are broken by networks that see first, decide first, and act before fear can calcify into paralysis. Tehran's fictional gamble was built on the assumption that narrow waters favor the disruptor. For a few minutes, that looked true. Then the other side revealed the deeper truth. In contested choke points, the force that integrates air, sea, land, space, and information doesn't just survive the first wave, it owns the tempo that follows. And that is how the Strait blockade ends in this scenario. Not with one dramatic explosion, but with a systematic collapse of every lever meant to make the world blink. Mines found, drones erased, swarms broken, launchers destroyed, corridor reopened. The waterway that was supposed to become a trap becomes a showcase of joint force response under pressure. How does this change your view of modern warfare in the world's most dangerous choke points? Share your take below. Subscribe to join the discussion.